All right, so let's dive right in. Ever heard that working out just makes you hungrier?
Yeah.
Like you'll undo all that hard work at the gym by eating more later? Well, you're not alone. It's a common misconception, but we're here to unpack the truth about exercise and appetite.
Okay.
For this deep dive, we're looking at a research article titled Acute and Chronic Effects of Exercise on Appetite, Energy Intake, and Appetite-Related Hormones, the modulating effect of adiposity, sex, and habitual physical activity from the National Library of Medicine.
Yes, this article is a review, which means the researchers have done all the heavy lifting for us, I guess you could say. They've analyzed a whole bunch of studies to get to the heart of what the science really says about how exercise affects your appetite.
Perfect. So no need to wade through tons of research. We've got you covered. And get this, one of the first things that jumped out at me was this concept of exercise-induced anorexia.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds intense, right?
It does have a bit of dramatic flair, doesn't it? But before you get alarmed, remember, this isn't about eating disorders. In this context, it simply refers to the fact that moderate to intense exercise can actually suppress your appetite, at least temporarily.
So it's like hitting the pause button on those hunger pangs while you're working out.
Exactly. And this effect seems to be more pronounced with aerobic exercise. Think running or cycling, compared to resistance training like lifting weights.
That's interesting. I always figured lifting weights would make you like ravenous afterward.
Yeah.
So does this mean you don't have to be super lean to experience this appetite suppression?
That's what the research suggests. One study by Douglas and his colleagues actually found that both lean and overweight individuals felt similarly less hungry during a workout. So no matter your starting point, you can benefit from that appetite control boost during exercise.
Okay, that's reassuring. Now, I know our bodies are a symphony of hormones, and some of those hormones are directly involved in regulating our appetite. What's going on behind the scenes with those hunger signals when we exercise?
It's a bit of a hormonal roller coaster, actually. Exercise tends to suppress ghrelin, which is often called the hunger hormone because it signals to your brain that it's time to eat.
So exercise is basically telling ghrelin to take a back seat for a while?
Exactly. At the same time, exercise ramps up the production of other hormones like PYY, GLP-1, and PP, which all signal to your brain that you're full and satisfied.
So we've got these hunger signals going down and satiety signals going up.
Right.
Sounds like a recipe for appetite control. But is this just a fleeting effect, or does it last a while?
That's the catch. While these hormonal shifts are powerful, they're often pretty short-lived. Typically, everything goes back to its normal baseline within a few hours.
So that explains why you don't necessarily end up eating a whole pizza after a good workout, even if you feel a bit hungry.
Exactly. You might feel a little hungrier than usual, but you're not likely to experience an uncontrollable urge to overeat.
This is really interesting. It challenges what a lot of people think about exercise. But what about individual differences? Does being male or female affect how your appetite responds to exercise?
That's a great question. The researchers have looked into this quite a bit, and the general consensus is that men and women actually have pretty similar appetite responses to exercise. This holds true even though men tend to burn more calories during exercise and generally have higher energy intakes overall.
So even though men might be eating more in general, both sexes experience that same temporary suppression of appetite after a workout.
Precisely. One study by Panissa and colleagues found that while men did eat more overall, both men and women showed similar patterns in how different exercise intensities impacted their appetite.
That's good to know. So you don't have to worry about exercise making you ravenously hungry, regardless of whether you're male or female.
Exactly. But keep in mind, most of this research focuses on the immediate effects of exercise. What happens when you make exercise a regular part of your life? Does that change the equation?
So we've seen how a single bout of exercise affects appetite.
Right.
Now let's talk about how being regularly active impacts things long term. What does the research tell us about that?
Well, think of it this way. If you're consistently challenging your body with exercise, it needs to get better at managing its energy intake to keep up with those demands.
So it's like your body becomes a more efficient machine, learning to balance the energy you're burning with the energy you're taking in.
That's a great way to put it. Research suggests that people who are habitually active might be more attuned to their body's true energy needs. They may be more sensitive to how many calories are in a meal and adjust their intake accordingly, almost like they have a built-in calorie counter.
That makes sense. So they're less likely to overeat after a workout, even if they feel a bit hungrier. But you mentioned this whole idea of coupling energy expenditure and intake. Can you explain that a little more?
Sure. Imagine your body as a system that's constantly trying to maintain balance. When you burn more energy through exercise, your body wants to replenish those energy stores. But for people who are regularly active, this process seems to become more finely tuned.
So it's like a feedback loop. You burn more, your body signals you to eat a bit more, but not to excess.
Exactly. And this might be one of the reasons why exercise is so beneficial for weight management. It's not just about burning calories during the workout, it's about helping your body become better at regulating its energy intake over the long term.
That's fascinating. It really highlights how exercise can have these ripple effects throughout our bodies beyond just the immediate physical benefits. But I have to ask, does this mean everyone who exercises regularly will magically become perfectly in tune with their hunger cues and never overeat?
I wish it were that simple. We know everyone responds to exercise differently. Some people naturally have a better sense of their hunger and fullness cues, while others struggle with that more. And of course, there are so many other factors that play a role in weight management, like genetics, metabolism, stress levels, and sleep habits.
Right. We can't just ignore all those other pieces of the puzzle. But let's talk about genetics for a moment. I've heard there are certain genes that can influence how exercise affects our appetite. Is there any truth to that?
Absolutely. There's a whole field of research emerging around this called nutritionics, which looks at how our genes interact with the food we eat and the exercise we do.
Okay, so no more generic advice. It's all about getting personalized here.
Exactly. One of the genes that's gotten a lot of attention is the FTO gene, which stands for fat mass and obesity associated gene. Variations in this gene can affect how people respond to food cues and how easily they feel full.
So could knowing your FTO gene variant help you tailor your exercise plan for better appetite control?
That's what researchers are exploring. For example, if someone has a gene variant that makes them more prone to feeling hungry or having difficulty with portion control, we might focus on exercise types that have been shown to have stronger effects on those satiety hormones we discussed earlier.
So maybe more emphasis on high-intensity interval training or longer duration cardio sessions.
Potentially. We might also experiment with the timing of your workouts in relation to meals to see how that affects your individual appetite response. Because remember, there's no one-size-fits-all approach. It's about figuring out what works best for you.
This is all so fascinating. It feels like we're on the verge of a whole new era of personalized fitness, where we can use our understanding of genetics and physiology to optimize our workouts for better health and well-being. But before we get too carried away dreaming about the future, let's bring it back to the present. What are some key takeaways for our listener today, based on all this research?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that exercise is unequivocally good for you.
Okay.
But when it comes to appetite, the story's a little more nuanced.
Right. It's not as simple as exercise equals instant hunger.
Right. We've seen that exercise can actually temporarily suppress your appetite, likely due to those hormonal shifts.
Yeah, those hunger hormones going down, the satiety signals going up. It's like a dance party in your gut.
Exactly.
Ooh.
And then when you zoom out and look at the long term, being regularly active seems to help your body get better at balancing its energy needs. You burn more, so you do need to eat more, but it's not this crazy out of control thing.
Okay, so no more guilt trips after a good sweat session.
No, absolutely not. And this is where things get really interesting because it opens up the possibility of using exercise strategically to manage appetite. Like, what if we could tailor workouts to specifically optimize those hormonal responses?
Now you're talking my language. So if you could design the ultimate appetite control workout plan, what would it look like?
Well, first off, I wouldn't call it the ultimate plan because what works for one person might not work for another.
Of course, we're all snowflakes, right?
Exactly. So let's say you come to me and you're like, help, I'm always hungry. First, I want to know, what are your goals? What do you enjoy doing? Are there any health conditions we need to be mindful of?
Right, got to get that personalized approach.
Totally. Then we could start looking at those individual factors we talked about. We'd consider your genetic predispositions, like those variations in the FTO gene, remember?
Yeah, the one that can influence how easily you feel full.
Right. So if you're someone who's genetically predisposed to feeling hungrier more often, we might focus on workouts that have been shown to have a bigger impact on those satiety hormones.
So more HIIT workouts, longer runs.
Maybe. We'd also have to consider your current fitness level and what you enjoy doing, of course.
Okay, so no forcing anyone to run marathons if they hate running.
Absolutely not. There are so many ways to move your body. The key is finding what you enjoy and what you'll actually stick with.
So finding that sweet spot where it's challenging enough to get results, but also fun and sustainable.
Exactly. We could also experiment with the timing of your workouts in relation to meals. Like, some people find that exercising on an empty stomach actually helps them manage their hunger throughout the day.
Oh, that's interesting. I've always been a gotta fuel up before a workout kind of person.
Right, and that might work better for you. It's all about that individualization.
I love this idea of using exercise as a tool to manage appetite. It's like we're hacking our own biology.
In a way, yeah. But we're just scratching the surface here. There's still so much we don't know about how exercise affects appetite and how we can optimize those effects. But that's what makes it so exciting. There's so much more to explore.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful. We've busted some myths, learned about those fascinating hormonal dances happening in our bodies, and even glimpsed into the future of personalized fitness.
Right. Hopefully we've empowered our listeners to think a little differently about their relationship with exercise and appetite.
Exactly. So before we sign off, what's one final thought you'd leave our listeners with today?
I'd say, don't be afraid to experiment and find what works for you. Pay attention to how your body feels, how your energy levels are, and how your appetite responds to different types of exercise and different timings.
So tune into those body whispers.
Exactly. Your body's got a lot of wisdom to share if you're willing to listen.
Absolutely. Well, this has been another amazing deep dive. Until next time.
Yeah, just listen to your body. It's pretty amazing.
It really is. Well, that brings us to the end of another deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And to all our listeners out there, keep those questions coming. We love exploring these fascinating topics with you. Until next time.